Let's turn now to London, where the markets were also lower in the UK this morning as traders digested fresh economic data. Let's cross over to our studio now, where Juliana Olayinka is standing by to tell us more about that. Good afternoon, Juliana. Thank God it's Friday. So data released today by the Office for the National Statistics shows that a record fall by 5.1% in UK retail sales, but alcohol demand soared. Now tell us more about the figures released, and are Britons drinking their way through the lockdown?
Good afternoon, Bissy. Are Britons drinking their way through the lockdown? Well, some are, some of us are not. But these figures are no surprising, really. It's another day, another bad set of economic figures coming out of the UK, particularly when it pertains to retail, because we all know that retail has been suffering over the past couple of years, but particularly last year, because some people just prefer fast fashion. They like to get their clothes online, and last year we did see the worst year on record for retail. Of course, this has not been helped by the lockdown measures which were introduced on the 23rd of March, which is why we've got this record low of 5.1% of a drop in sales in March in comparison to February. What has worried a lot of analysts and economists is, of course, March the 23rd until March the 31st is just only 8 days. And if just 8 days can show this significant fall in sales, then what is the entirety of April going to show us? There are some suggestions that retail sales may fall by as much as 30 to 40%, which would be crippling. Some stores already haven't survived. Laura Ashley was one of the first casualties, and Warehouse and Oasis, some really popular retail stores in the UK, have gone into administration, and there will be many more to come. So that isn't great. Yes, there was that 10.1% surge in the sales of alcohol. And again, that obviously has contributed to the lockdown because bars, restaurants and clubs are shut. And so consumers are probably taking advantage of cheaper alcohol prices at the supermarket and, spending their evenings at home drinking alone.
Now, the Treasury has confirmed that it may offer 100% guarantees on loans up to £25,000 for UK-based small and medium-sized businesses. However, the companies say that they're still finding it difficult to get credit. Is the process of getting these loans perhaps too complicated?
Well, absolutely, it's complicated. It's we're dealing with, again, the word of the year, unprecedented situation. And when the Chancellor started talking about these measures a month ago, who would have known that it would be so difficult to try and access these funds? A lot of the blame is being placed, Bissy, on the banks. Banks are being really reluctant to let a lot of this money go, considering we're in just dire financial straits at the moment, which is why there have been calls from a lot of opposition MPs as well as ministers in the Conservative government who rely on the support by many owners of these businesses, are urging the government to back a lot of these loans 100%. There is the loans for companies who turn over more than £45 million a year. That's probably the most popular loan, the Coronavirus Business Interruption Scheme. About 16,000 businesses have been able to access that money, but there have been over 36,000 applications, which goes to show more than half of people that apply are not getting it. So now, apparently, the Chancellor is looking at another scheme on top of all of the other schemes he's already got to help some of Britain's smallest businesses. And yes, this is with a £25,000 loan, and it would show that there is a guarantee of the government by 100%. And if there's a 100% guarantee, which shows the banks that they will, come rain or snow, get their money back, the banks will be more keen to learn in. Of course, there are critiques. There's always going to be criticism on both sides. And some of the issues I think some of the senior cabinet members in the UK are having is that if you start guaranteeing these loans 100%, they could be open for fraud. People could start creating businesses that didn't exist. These are just some of the very, very, very varied and many issues you have with coronavirus and a government that's trying to help as many people as possible.
Just before you go, Juliana, tell us, how are the markets performing at this time, and give us expectations for next week.
Well, at intraday, the FTSE has lost some points more than it was at early trading. The all share is down 0.63%. The FTSE 100 is down 0.73%, and the FTSE 250 slightly up just by 0.09%. In the currencies market, the pound is up on the US dollar by 0.06%. Similarly, on the euro, and up on the Japanese yen by 0.09%. What's the outlook for next week, Bissy? Gosh, I don't have my crystal ball on me. But of course, COVID-19 is what everybody is looking at. Britain will be going into their 6th week of a lockdown. The next week, the week after that, we'll be having this review. And will this review come with new social distancing measures that are going to last more than 6 months? That's what some people predict. Also as well, Prime Minister Boris Johnson, there have been some suggestions, especially earlier this morning, that perhaps we may start seeing him again on Monday. He hasn't obviously been at work since his serious, almost deathly struggle with the coronavirus. Dominic Raab, the Foreign Secretary, has been deputising, but he did speak to US President Donald Trump earlier in the week, as well as Her Majesty the Queen. And so there are some suggestions that we may start to see him. And Brexit as well here in Britain may be a talking point. The EU's chief negotiator, Michel Barnier, has just been speaking publicly, and he didn't mince his words. They're pretty ticked off with Britain at the moment. They've given them until June to decide whether or not they want to extend the transition period, which expires at the end of this year. Now, in law, it says that we must leave. We've left the EU, but everything is at the moment the same until the end of the year, and that is enshrined in law that whether there's a deal or not, we are out and we'll be living under our own rules. But this was before a global health pandemic crippled the economy and crippled the Prime Minister. So there are discussions that perhaps Britain will change its mind and will extend that transition after on. So Brexit keeps on going.
Thank you, Juliana, and do have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you, you too.